Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
It was announced today the three players that will represent Alabama next week at SEC Media Days will be senior center Bradley Bozeman and a pair of juniors, defensive back Mika Fitzpatrick and wide receiver Calvin Ridley. The players and Coach Saban will make their rounds in Hoover on Wednesday, July 12th, with interviews that morning starting at 9 a.m. Central Time. Of course, the event kicks off on Monday afternoon. And good evening, everybody. Welcome in to the Wednesday edition of Tider Insider TV, presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock Bottling Company. That's right, we're coming to you a day late because yesterday was the 4th of July. But we're glad to be here, and we're glad to have Diet Pepsi tonight provided to us from our good friends at Buffalo Rock. Love that sound, but I tell you what, it's even better when it's going down. Just like that. Pick yourself up some great Pepsi products the next time you're at your local grocery store. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm Gary Harris. And Rodney, we mentioned SEC Media Days has become an event that is just taking on a life of its own. I remember when it really was geared toward the media. Now I'm not so sure that it's not more about the hype, and of course fans are there in the lobby and so forth and so on. So I guess the question is, while it's much anticipated because it's kind of become the unofficial kickoff to the season, even though it's not even mid-July yet. I think it's way too early, but still, this event, is it more show or substance?
Yeah, you know, Gary, I think now it is a lot of show, no question about it. But I mean, hey, it's a great show. I think it's a great opportunity to kind of kick off the season, get everything started. You have an opportunity to hear the coaches, maybe their evaluations from spring practice as they move forward through the summer workouts, and you know, it just kind of gets everybody in that mode. So I think it's a perfect start.
You know, always a lot of anticipation as to, and there's O.J. Howard from last year, as to who will be selected to go as players. And, you know, there will be a couple of sophomore quarterbacks there. Bentley from South Carolina, Patterson from Ole Miss. We're not surprised that Jalen Hurts won't be there. But one senior, Bradley Bozeman, two juniors, Calvin Ridley, and Mika Fitzpatrick. What do you think about Alabama's decision to take those three players?
Well, I mean, I guess if we were talking about it, those would probably be three of the 4 or 5 that we would mention if we did. And I think all of those guys obviously have a lot of experience talking to the media, do a fantastic job. Bradley Bozeman, Mika Fitzpatrick, and also Calvin Ridley. And I think those guys will represent Alabama really well up there.
You know, one thing that is interesting to me about this event, and with Nick Saban, you know what you're going to get. I mean, he is straightforward. There's no need for him to have to try to play any angles. Okay, but for a lot of these coaches, this is a message to the fans. If you're a team where not a lot is expected, I think the coaches want to give hope, because you don't want to say we're not any good even before the season starts. But if expectations are maybe higher than you want, it's an opportunity maybe to dumb them down just a little bit. I think most of these coaches have a specific agenda geared toward their fan bases. Would you agree with that?
Well, probably so. Now, with that said, there's really going to be difficult for Nick Saban to dumb down the expectations.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think he falls into that crew.
Yeah.
I just think he's able to shoot straight, but he's earned that. But a lot of coaches, let's take Gus Malzahn, for instance.
I think that's a perfect example.
You know, they're a little unhappy with him right now, but expectations are going to be high for them. I think he'll play up the expectations because I think he wants his fan base on board with the fact that we can be really good. And then, because if they're not good, whether he said they're going to be good or not probably ain't going to matter. So I think he'll play it up. Now, I think in some cases, some other coaches, I think Will Muschamp will probably be one that says, hey, you know, wait just a minute, just because we got Jake Bentley at quarterback. You know, so I think it depends on where you're at with your program. But with Nick Saban, Rodney, there's no need to have to sugarcoat anything.
I'll give you another example of a guy that I expect to play down expectations. That's going to be Kirby Smart at Georgia.
Yeah, it's a good
I think
example.
There's extreme expectations now with Kirby. I think he had a really good team last year. And I'll be honest with you, 8-5, they underachieved. I know they played a freshman quarterback, but they underachieved. He looked like a first-year head coach, and I think Georgia's going to be expecting a lot. Remember this. Georgia fired a guy that won 10 games a year over 15 years to hire a guy who'd never been a head coach in his life. I think if they want to take it to the next level, Kirby Smart now, he's had 2 good recruiting classes. This is his 2nd year. They're going to expect better results.
It all starts on Monday, 4 days now, 14 teams. Every head coach and 3 players from each team will be represented beginning next Monday over in Hoover. Of course, we'll have it covered for you here on WVUA 23. As we mentioned, Bradley Bozeman, Calvin Ridley, and Mika Fitzpatrick will be there. But let's talk about the future of the Alabama program, and that, of course, is recruiting. The Tide landing a big-time recruit over the weekend. I use that term a lot, big time, but it always seems to be the case with Alabama. Four-star defensive end Stephon Wynn, the senior out of IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida, originally from Anderson, South Carolina, chose Alabama over Georgia in his home state, South Carolina Gamecocks. Rodney, he is a player. Let's take a look.
The first time you choose is the first Alabama.
All right, there was the scene as he made his commitment to the Crimson Tide, ranked by one service as the 104th best player, regardless of position in the class. He's the 6th overall commit for the 2018 class for Alabama. Tell me about him, Rodney.
Well, I tell you what, Gary, you know, sometimes you sit down in the spring when these evaluation periods are beginning to start, or maybe February after the signing day is over, and you start looking ahead to some of the other guys. When I watched Stephon Wynn, I really liked him. I think he's a very, very solid defensive line prospect, outstanding. You know, as a guy that's really strong against the run. He's gotten a lot bigger over the last year. He's gained like 30 pounds. And, you know, one of the things I really like about him is the fact that his dad, Stephon Wynn Sr., played at Clemson.
Sure did.
He's a no-nonsense guy. And he told us, we talked to him after the commitment, he said, you know, if I made Nick Saban one promise, and that's my son will give 110%. And if I find out he's not giving 110%, I'll go down there and take care of it myself. What I'm trying to say is this guy has been raised with the right mentality. I think he's a perfect fit for the Nick Saban system.
What I really like about him, Rodney, he's that new wave of defensive lineman. He's big enough at 280, 285 that he can hold the point of attack. He can get off blocks. He can stop the run. But he's athletic enough to play in space and rush the passer. I mean, we've talked about it before. The game has changed. If you're only a one-dimensional lineman, it's hard for Alabama to take you. They want guys that can do it all, and he has the potential to be that type of player.
Yeah, he does. And I think, you know, when you look at him, Gary, again, he fits the mold that Alabama likes. I think he's a guy that comes in a very high position, a priority position in terms of the defensive line.
As we said, Alabama being very careful this year in regards to taking commitments, just 6, but they've only got 22 total spots. It is quality over quantity at this point for the Crimson Tide. Well, we talked about current players, future players. Let's talk about some former players. Former Alabama defensive lineman Quentin Dial in Tuscaloosa last week, and he's about to enter his 5th season with the 49ers. Time flies. He was drafted back in 2013. Now he has quickly become a productive player for the Niners. In 2015, he had 59 tackles with 2.5 sacks, added 36 more tackles last season. He visited, as I said, Tuscaloosa last week to talk to some veterans, and that's a great thing that he did. He'll be joined this year by another former Crimson Tide star, first-round draft pick linebacker Reuben Foster. Now, those two didn't play with each other at Alabama. They missed each other by a year, but Dial is still looking forward to having Reuben as a teammate.
That's a great addition. I think Reuben Foster's going to do really well for us, and you know he's a great linebacker. He's going to be a great player for us. It's one of those things that he just had to come in and get acclimated into the system and get acclimated to being a pro and what it truly means to be a pro. And I'm sure it's going to be an easy transition for him with how Coach Saban ran the program in Alabama.
Yeah, I always say it. It's like a team. Real quick before we go to the break. Came out of Clay Chalkville, had to go to junior college over in Scooby, Mississippi for a couple years. Was never a star, but solid at every level and solid now in the NFL. Really good football player.
And just continue to develop even on the next level.
Yeah. All right, still to come on TITV, a sit-down with Alabama head baseball coach Brad Bohannon, what he had to say regarding the Crimson Tide's future on the diamond. And Chandler Taylor showed his power over the weekend and then some at the College Baseball Home Run Derby in Omaha, so much so that well, I don't think you're going to make him pay for the scoreboard, but he popped it and put out a couple of lights. We'll have that for you. Plus, we'll be getting your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the information on how you can get in touch with us. The phone number is always 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Lines are open. I know it's early July, but get on the phones. SEC Media Days are next week. Let's talk some football or whatever's on your mind. Tider Insider TV will return right after this timeout.
But I got off the field at, I think it was 12:30 the night before. 12 hours later, or 8 hours later, I'm on a plane and I'm here doing a press conference. So it did not seem real until the next day when I got to work.
Welcome back to Tider Insider TV. Alongside Rodney, I'm Gary Harris. It was a whirlwind for new Alabama baseball coach Brad Bohannon, the former Auburn assistant coach. Hired a few weeks ago and hit the ground running. He's the 3rd coach for the Crimson Tide in the last 3 years, and he's got a tough job ahead of him, but with the brand new facility, an athletics director who knows baseball, and a school that he says practically sells itself, Coach Bohannon knows exactly what he's going to be selling in Alabama.
The SEC is a tough league to rebuild in. But we got a great place to sell. We got a $43 million ballpark. We've got some good pieces in place here. We've got the Alabama college experience and Alabama football. I'm not going to shy away from the expectations that I have and our coaches have for our program are going to be higher than anyone else has for us.
Well, Rodney, with everything that's happened with this baseball program in the past couple of years, even in the last month, he's got a lot of enthusiasm. He's got a great track record for recruiting, and he's going to need both of those, enthusiasm and great recruiting, because this is a rebuilding job. They won 19 games total and 5 games in the SEC last season. You
know, it's kind of strange because he's never been a head coach, but there seems to be, just when you look at people who follow baseball, Alabama fans, you read Tider Insider certainly, there's a lot of people that are extremely excited. They have a lot of confidence in Brad Bohannon, and there were a lot of people saying this is the guy that Greg Byrne needs to hire. Even though he's never been a head coach, a lot of confidence in him. I think a lot of that has to do with, the success he's had in the programs he's been in as an assistant, and also, Gary, just his reputation as a talent evaluator and a recruiter.
Yeah, I like the fact, too, that he recruited great classes at 2 schools, Kentucky and Auburn, that, like Alabama, don't have the benefit of a lottery. So they're stuck there on that 11.7, but he was able to bring in great players. Of course, A.J. Reed at Kentucky was a Golden Spikes Award winner, the best player in the country in college baseball that year. He'll need to get those type of players if Alabama is going to get to Omaha, where it has not been since 1999. Well, some more Alabama baseball news. Crimson Tide slugger Chandler Taylor launched 49 home runs this past Saturday night during the College Home Run Derby in Omaha, Nebraska. Taylor finished second in the total number of home runs behind Morehead State's Nico Holsizer, but make no mistake, he was the star. He launched at least one ball completely out of the ballpark, and maybe the bats were juiced up or the balls had the seams raised, I don't know, but he put on a show. He hit a couple into the scoreboard, knocking out some of the digital lights as the panels went black. I mean, this guy, we knew he had power, Rodney. He showed it off. That was quite a show Saturday night.
49, wow.
Yeah. And as I said, came up one short, but had the most impressive home runs. I think he had the 4 longest of the night all off his bat. Well, up next on TITV, there's a new addition to the Alabama men's basketball program. He's already on campus here in Tuscaloosa. We'll have the latest. And up next, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. And as I said, phone lines are open. So a good opportunity for you to get through right now at 205-348-9882. If you prefer, you can email us at the address on your screen, or you can tweet at us. Please use the hashtag TITV so that Bethany can pull your tweet off. We'll be right back with more of the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. The one, the only, Tider Insider TV will return. Alabama head basketball coach Avery Johnson officially announced last week the addition of guard forward Tevin Mack to the Crimson Tide program. He's enrolled at the Capstone and currently taking classes during the Summer 2 session. He played his freshman and sophomore seasons at Texas. During his sophomore season, he led the Longhorns with 14.8 points and 31.3 minutes per game. He didn't play the entire season there, but he will have to sit out the upcoming year due to NCAA transfer rules. But this is a 6'8" kid that you can see there. He's got some game. He'll be a big addition to Alabama. All right, Rod, you ready to take some phone calls?
Sure.
All right, let's go to the phone lines. And first up is Bill over in Buell. Bill, how are you?
All right, how y'all?
Doing well. What's up, my friend?
Well, I was wondering about the pick play that Clemson beat Alabama on. Do you think that's going to be ignored again or redefined, or what do you think?
Oh, I don't know, Bill. It's it's part of the game. People have run pick plays for as long as I've been watching football. Very rarely are they called. Have I seen them called before? Yeah, the Notre Dame-Florida State game comes to mind. It's a good question. I don't know. If they're going to be illegal, then I guess they need to be called more often. But intent always comes into play. Even coaches will tell you, if you get a good rub, but you don't make it too obvious, it's not going to be called. Clemson ran 2 pick plays, effective for 2 touchdowns against Alabama, but they didn't get called.
Yeah, and I think what you really have to do now is you have to learn how are you going to defend that, when you're down in that situation and expect that. I mean, you're going to have to make some adjustments. And obviously you mentioned the Florida State-Notre Dame game a couple of years ago. And they did call it, and it probably cost Notre Dame the game. And the consistency of calling is just not there.
Yeah. Of course, it's all about perspective. I guarantee you the Clemson fans are saying, no way that should have been called. Alabama fans are saying it should have been called. I guess it just depends on what side you're on. I'm with you there a little bit, Bill. I think if it's going to be an illegal play, and then the officials need to recognize when it's the blatant intent is to pick the guy so that the other guy can get open and throw the flag occasionally. But it didn't happen in that game. All right, phone lines are open at 205-348-WVUA if you want to get through. Let's take an email question. This is from Tom over in Vestavia. Wants to know, Rodney, do you think Brian Robinson, the running back from Hillcrest, very talented freshman for the Crimson Tide, will be redshirted? It's a good question. He's a very talented player, but this is a stacked running back core right now.
Yeah, you know, there's been years that Gary, I think he probably could have come in and play. Again, he was very impressive in the spring. I think he's going to have a great career. You know, will he be redshirted? Really don't know. I guess, you know, things could always change. You have injuries at times and different things that come up that might change the situation, but there's a possibility that could happen.
Yeah, I think, again, I think we might have mentioned this last week. We might have had something on Brian Robinson, the running backs, come up. It is a testament to how well they've recruited here. A lot of places, this young man would come in, and not only would he be counted on playing, he might be battling for a starting position. He's that talented. A lot of places would love to have him. Yeah, he may very well be redshirted here because of the depth at the position, but good to have that kind of depth and that type of talent. All right, phone lines are open, so if you want to get through, this would be a good night to call. 205-348-9882 is the number. Coming up on TITV, more phone calls, emails, and tweets. Also, the future of Alabama golf on the women's side is very bright, as they've got a young lady that is a championship caliber golfer right now. More on Michaela Murad's fantastic outing coming up next on the show, plus those phone calls. Keep it here. TITV coming back after this. The future of Alabama women's golf is in good hands. Last week, 15-year-old Michaela Murad fired off an 11 under par 205 to win the 54th Alabama Girls State Junior Championship at Valley Hill Country Club in Huntsville, and she won it by 14 shots. Last year, she finished second. When she was 13, she won it. She is some kind of player. She committed to Alabama last year in the 8th grade and won't be eligible to play college golf until 2020. But we know she is really, really talented. In fact, I talked to her dad on my radio show. Her career low in a tournament, 63. Wow. Her career low overall, 61.
Wow.
She's a phenom. All right, let's go back to the phone lines. First up is Fred over in Talladega. What's up, Fred? Fred, you there? Take it away, Fred. All right, Fred wanted to know how many teams can beat Alabama. That's always a good question, because I'll say what I always say. I think you're right. I think most of the teams on the schedule, Alabama's going to win just by showing up. They're just better. But there are 3 or 4 teams every year, in my opinion, that have the potential to beat Alabama. Very rarely do all 3 or 4 of those teams do that. It did happen in 2010 when South Carolina, LSU, and Auburn all knocked off Alabama. Rodney, I think that potentially Florida State, obviously right off the bat, could win. I think you have to look at going to Auburn as a game that Alabama could drop if they don't play their best. LSU here, just because of the talent level that LSU has. And, you know, there's always tough games against other teams in the SEC. So, you know, but those are 3 that come to mind right off the bat. I think Florida State, LSU, and Auburn, all from a talent standpoint, are good enough that if they play well and Alabama doesn't play their best, they could lose those games. Yeah,
and I think if you look at the 2010 season, you remember those 2 games, the South Carolina and the Auburn game. If you'd have said before the season those 2 teams would beat Alabama, you'd have said, no way. I mean, right. You wouldn't have thought that. But, you know, again, I think a lot of the teams you mentioned there, certainly FSU to start the season. I mean, that's Alabama's, you know, most difficult opener, in my opinion, just on paper as we look at it now. I would think that's the most difficult opener that they've had since Nick Saban's been here.
Yeah, it's never easy in the SEC, but certainly I think for Alabama, when they lose, it's a combination, first of all, of another team playing great and Alabama maybe not playing their best. All right, let's go over to Anniston, talk with a good friend, Harold. Harold, how are you?
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Doing well.
Hey, I wanted to ask you and Rodney, man, off the top of your head, man, do you know a couple of, maybe 2 or 3 of the girls that Coach Murphy has got committed to softball?
Yeah, you know, Harold, we've run these down in the past. I don't have the list in front of me right now, so I'm not going to get into names. I will tell you this. He's got a very fine class coming in, a really fine class, both hitting, and he's got a junior college pitcher in that came in that that he signed that's coming in that put up remarkable numbers. Again, we've run them down. I know you watch every week. I've run down every signee he's got a couple of times on the show. Don't have him tonight, but it's a very, very highly rated recruiting class to join what is already a very formidable team.
Yeah, and I've said this too, Harold. When we had Coach Murphy a few weeks ago, I know he was extremely excited about not only this recruiting class here, but the one for the next couple of years. He was really excited about how far in advance they were doing really well.
All right, Bethany, we want to get that email in that we have, or we want to go ahead and all right, we're going to go ahead. Thanks for the phone calls, and thanks for the email as well. All right, still to come, a former Alabama football player ranked by his peers as one of the best in the NFL. You'll probably be able to figure it out. If not, we'll tell you who it is. That's coming up when TITV continues live from Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa inside our WVUA 23 studios right after this. Eddie Lacy is pumped about playing for the Seahawks. This is video he posted on his Twitter account. He's in shape. He is ready to go. He signed a one-year deal, so he knows that he's got to play well this year to get that big contract next year. Look for him to have a big year. And former Alabama player and current Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Julio Jones put together another amazing year last year in 2016, and he has been recognized by his peers as one of the NFL's top 100 players, number 3 on the list. That's up from number 8 last year. He's the highest ranked receiver on the list, 102 catches for 1,743 yards and 9 touchdowns last year, and just a phenomenal athlete and wide receiver. All right, our beautiful shirts and ties, as always, provided by the Locker Room in downtown Tuscaloosa, home of the original Elephant Wear. Go by and see Alex and Rush and the rest of the courteous staff, or shop online at locker-room.biz. They will have you looking your best. That's the Locker Room, downtown Tuscaloosa, or shop online and get what you want anytime you want to order it right there off the internet. All right, that is going to do it for the program. Thanks so much for watching, and a reminder that if you missed the show, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30, or you can catch it on our website at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Have a good night, and we'll see you back at our regular time next week on Tuesday at 6:30 for TITV.